The Zoom window filled my screen at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. No warning, no calendar invite, just a sudden ping and Vanessa Whitmore's face appeared, her expression rehearsed and distant. "Alina, I'll keep this brief," she said, not even pretending at pleasantries. "We're restructuring to reduce operational friction. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. HR will send the paperwork. 22 years, 3 rescues from the edge of total collapse. And this was how it ended. A 5-minute Zoom call squeezed between her Pilates class and dinner reservation. My finger hovered over my phone. One emoji, that's all I sent in reply. A simple wave goodbye. 30 seconds passed, maybe less. Then I watched her face change. The color drained from her cheeks. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was looking at something on her other screen, something that made her hands start shaking. Her bank account balance. Every account, every investment, every carefully hidden offshore fund. All reading the same thing, 0. Before we go further into what happened that day, I want to mention something. This channel shares real stories about what happens behind closed corporate doors. The decisions that change lives. The moments when everything shifts. If stories like these matter to you, I'd appreciate you joining us by subscribing. We're working our way to 5,000 subscribers, and each person who joins helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. There's a button nearby that says subscribe, that's all it takes. My name is Alina Hughes. For the past 22 years, I served as Chief Financial Officer at Whitmore & Associates, a mid-sized investment firm in Boston. Before that, I worked my way up from junior accountant, spending weekends getting my CPA, then my MBA, all while raising 2 kids mostly on my own after my husband passed. I grew up in a neighborhood where people knew what it meant to stretch a dollar. My father worked at the post office for 40 years. My mother cleaned houses until her knees gave out. They taught me that numbers tell stories, and those stories matter because they represent real people's lives. Real families, real dreams. That foundation never left me, even when I started managing 9-figure portfolios. Maybe especially then, I never forgot what it felt like to worry about making rent, to choose between fixing the car and buying new school shoes. That memory kept me honest. It kept me careful. And it made me very, very good at seeing trouble before it arrived, which is exactly what I did. 3 times. 3 times I saw the cliff edge approaching and pulled Whitmore & Associates back from it. The first time was 2008. Everyone remembers that year, the financial collapse that swallowed firms whole. Lehman Brothers disappeared overnight, Bear Stearns evaporated, Merrill Lynch had to be rescued. And dozens of smaller firms just quietly closed their doors and ceased to exist. Whitmore & Associates should have been one of them. I saw it coming in early 2007. The mortgage-backed securities everyone treated like gold were built on sand. I ran the numbers 3 different ways, and every model showed the same outcome: disaster. I went to Richard Whitmore, Vanessa's father and the firm's founder, with a proposal. Get out, sell everything connected to residential mortgages. Take the hit to our quarterly numbers now and survive what was coming. Richard trusted me. He didn't like the recommendation. It would make the firm look foolish while everyone else was still printing money from mortgage derivatives. But he trusted my analysis. We liquidated our entire mortgage-backed portfolio over 6 months. Our competitors laughed. Our clients complained. The board questioned Richard's judgment. Then September 2008 arrived. While other firms collapsed, we weathered the storm. We lost some value like everyone, but we survived intact. Our clients kept their money. Our employees kept their jobs. The firm Richard had spent 30 years building continued to exist. Richard called me into his office that November. He was 71 years old, planning to retire in a few years, and he looked exhausted. But he shook my hand and said, "You saved us, Alina, I won't forget it." He kept his word. He made sure I received a significant bonus that year, not enough to be extravagant, but enough to finally pay off my mortgage, enough to start my daughter's college fund. The second time was 2015. Richard had retired by then. His daughter Vanessa had taken over as CEO 3 years earlier. She came from a different world than her father. Wharton Business School, a stint at Goldman Sachs, all the right connections in New York and London. She had ideas. Big ideas about expansion and growth and capturing market share. She wanted to open 4 new branch offices simultaneously: Atlanta, Houston, Seattle, and Miami. She'd found a partner willing to invest heavily in the expansion, a private equity group called Stellaris Capital. I reviewed the terms of their proposed deal. What I found made my stomach drop. The debt structure was toxic. The interest rates were manageable for the first 2 years, then ballooned to nearly 18%. The covenants gave Stellaris the right to seize company assets if we missed certain performance targets. Targets that were, based on my analysis, almost impossible to hit even under ideal market conditions. It was a trap. A sophisticated one, but a trap nonetheless. Stellaris wasn't interested in partnership. They were positioning to take over the entire firm within 5 years, probably sooner. I prepared a 40-page analysis and presented it to Vanessa. She didn't want to hear it. By June, the markets had recovered significantly. By the end of 2020, most of our portfolios were back to pre-pandemic levels. By mid-2021, many were at record highs. Our clients stayed with us. Our reputation for steady leadership actually strengthened. We gained new accounts from people leaving firms that had panicked and sold. Once again, Whitmore and Associates survived because someone was willing to see past the immediate fear. But Vanessa's attitude toward me changed after that. The resentment that had been simmering since 2015 became something colder. She started excluding me from strategic meetings, hired consultants for things I used to handle directly, began making comments about fresh perspectives and new generation leadership. I felt it coming, the ending. But after 22 years, after 3 times literally saving the firm, I thought I'd at least get a respectful exit. A transition period. A retirement package that reflected my contribution. That's not what happened. That Tuesday afternoon Zoom call came without warning. No performance review, no prior discussion, just sudden termination disguised as corporate efficiency. "We're restructuring to reduce operational friction," Vanessa had said. Operational friction? That's what she called loyalty, expertise, 2 decades of institutional knowledge. After she delivered her prepared statement, she asked if I had any questions. Her finger was already moving toward the end call button. I didn't have questions, I had clarity. I opened the messaging app on my phone, typed Vanessa's name, and sent a single emoji, a small hand waving goodbye. Then I pressed send on something else. Something I'd hoped I would never need to use. You have to understand how corporate finance works at certain levels. The separation between personal and professional money becomes thin, complex. Investment accounts in company names that executives treat as personal funds. Offshore structures that blur legal lines. Creative accounting that lives in gray areas. For 22 years, I was the person who managed those gray areas for Whitmore and Associates. For the company, and for Vanessa personally, I knew every account, every structure, every password and access code, because that was my job. Protecting the assets meant knowing where all the assets were, including the ones that shouldn't have existed. Over the years, Vanessa had siphoned money from the firm, not dramatically, not all at once, just small redirections. Client fees that got routed to personal accounts, bonus structures that paid her twice, investment returns that never made it back to the company ledger. Individually, each instance was small enough to overlook. Collectively, over 15 years, it added up to nearly $4 million. I documented everything. Not because I planned to use it, because that's what good CFOs do. We maintain accurate records, we track every dollar. We create audit trails, and we build safeguards. The system I'd created was elegant. A series of interconnected protocols tied to my active employment status. As long as I remained CFO, everything stayed normal. My credentials stayed active. My access remained valid. The automatic transfers continued their scheduled routes. But if my employment terminated suddenly, especially without proper transition protocols, the system interpreted that as a security breach, a hostile action. And it responded accordingly. Every account I'd managed for Vanessa, every offshore structure, every creative arrangement, they all had emergency protocols. Freezes, lockouts, automatic transfers to segregated holding accounts. Not theft, not embezzlement, just immediate asset protection pending investigation. The wave emoji was my confirmation code, the signal that told the automated system to execute. 30 seconds. That's how long it took for every one of Vanessa's accounts to lock down, every balance to show zero, every access point to deny her entry. I watched her face on that Zoom call, watched the realization hit her, the confusion, the panic. The understanding. She tried to speak. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out at first. Finally, "What did you do?" "I protected the firm's assets," I said calmly. "As CFO, my last official act was to freeze all accounts showing irregular activity pending forensic audit. Standard protocol when there's unexpected leadership transition without proper handoff procedures." "You can't, this is..." She was staring at her other screen, frantically clicking. "Where is my money?" "The firm's money, you mean? It's secure. Locked down until a proper investigation can determine what belongs to the company and what doesn't." Her face went from pale to red, anger replacing shock. "I'll have you arrested. This is theft. This is accounting," I interrupted. "Every transaction is documented. Every transfer has a paper trail. In fact, I have 22 years of documentation showing exactly where every dollar came from and where it went. I'm sure the board would be very interested in reviewing those records. So would the SEC, probably." The anger drained away, fear took its place. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "I wanted respect," I said. "I wanted common decency, a phone call before the termination, a conversation, maybe a thank you for saving your family's firm 3 times, but we're past that now. Eleanor, please, here's what happens next. You're going to call an emergency board meeting. Tonight, you're going to present your resignation as CEO. You're going to cite personal reasons and recommend a full financial audit for the transition. The board will discover the irregularities in the accounts. You'll return what you took, and in exchange, they probably won't press criminal charges. Probably. And if I don't, then I send my documentation to the SEC, the state attorney general, and every financial journalist I've developed relationships with over 2 decades. Your family name gets destroyed. The firm your father built gets torn apart in scandal. Everyone loses." Silence on the call. I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow. "You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow," I continued. "Either I receive confirmation that you've resigned and agreed to the audit, or the documentation goes public. Your choice?" I ended the call. My hands were shaking, adrenaline and shock at what I'd just done. 22 years of playing by the rules, and in 30 seconds I'd become something I never thought I'd be. But I wasn't wrong. The money Vanessa had taken belonged to the firm, to the clients. The system I'd created wasn't revenge. It was protection. At least that's what I told myself while I sat in my home office, staring at my dark computer screen. My phone rang 20 minutes later, unknown number. "Yes." "Eleanor Hughes," a man's voice, professional, careful. "Speaking. My name is Lawrence Blackwell. I'm a partner at Hendricks and Royce. I've been retained to represent Vanessa Whitmore in a matter concerning her recent separation from Whitmore and Associates." An attorney, that was fast. "I'm listening." "Miss Whitmore would like to arrange a meeting to discuss a mutual resolution to certain misunderstandings that occurred today." "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Blackwell. The situation is clear. Your client has until 9 a.m. tomorrow to resign and submit to a financial audit. No negotiation, no discussion." "Miss Hughes, I don't think you understand the serious legal jeopardy you've placed yourself in. Unauthorized access to corporate accounts, illegal asset freezes, what could be construed as extortion? The access was authorized. I'm still CFO until the formal paperwork processes, which takes 72 hours per company policy. The asset freezes are standard security protocol for irregular activity, and there's no extortion. I'm not asking for money or benefit. I'm requiring accountability for documented financial misconduct. Every action I took is defensible and documented." Silence on his end. "Then, Miss Whitmore is willing to offer a generous severance package in exchange for your immediate release of the frozen accounts and a non-disclosure agreement." "Not interested." $500,000, Miss Hughes. Plus full benefits continuation for 5 years. I almost laughed. She'd stolen $4 million and was offering me half of $1 million to look the other way. "Tell your client she has until 9 a.m. After that, the choice is out of both our hands." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. That night was long. I didn't sleep. I kept running through everything in my mind. The documentation I had, the accounts I'd frozen. the legal standing of every action I'd taken. I'd been careful. 22 years of being the person who caught other people's mistakes had taught me to never make unforced errors. Everything I'd done was technically within my authority as CFO. Aggressive, yes. Unprecedented, definitely. But legal. At least I was 90% sure it was legal. The other 10% kept me awake. At 6:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. I turned it back on at 6, knowing the deadline was approaching. An email from Harrison Caldwell, the chairman of Whitmore and Associates Board. "Eleanor, I need you to call me immediately." "Harrison," I called. "Eleanor, what in God's name is happening?" He sounded tired. Old. Harrison was 76, a friend of Richard Whitmore's since college and had been on the board for 25 years. "You received communication from Vanessa?" I asked. "I received a call at midnight from her attorney threatening legal action against the firm. Then at 4 a.m., I got a very different call from Vanessa herself asking for an emergency board meeting. She sounded like she'd been crying. Now I have you freezing company accounts without authorization." "With authorization," I corrected. "The protocols I implemented are part of the security framework approved by the board in 2019. Automatic asset protection in cases of sudden leadership changes without proper transition procedures." "You terminated Vanessa's personal accounts." "I secured accounts showing irregular transaction patterns pending audit. The fact that Vanessa considers them personal accounts is interesting since they were funded through company channels." Another silence. Then quieter. "What did you find, Eleanor?" "You should convene the board meeting Vanessa requested. I'll present my findings there." "She's saying you fabricated evidence because you're angry about being terminated." "The evidence is transaction records, Harrison, bank statements, transfer logs, nothing fabricated. Everything verifiable through third-party institutions. If she's claiming the records are fake, she's welcome to explain that to federal investigators." A long exhale on his end. "The board meets at 10 a.m. You'll be there, I'll be there. And you'll release the frozen accounts?" "After the board reviews the documentation and determines the appropriate course of action." "Eleanor, I've known you for 15 years, tell me straight. Is this legitimate or is this revenge?" The question landed hard. "Was it both? Could it be both?" "The financial irregularities are real," I said. "The documentation is accurate. What Vanessa did was wrong and probably illegal. Whether my methods of bringing it to light were influenced by anger at being fired without cause? Maybe. But that doesn't make the underlying facts less true." "All right," Harrison said. 10 a.m., conference room, bring everything you have." I brought everything I had. 22 years of meticulous records fit into 3 bankers' boxes and 2 external hard drives. I arrived at Whitmore and Associates at 9:15. The office I'd occupied for 2 decades had already been cleared out. My desk empty, my files boxed, my name placard gone. That stung more than I expected. Harrison met me in the lobby. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "The full board is here," he said. 7 members plus our corporate counsel, Vanessa and her attorney. "This is going to be difficult?" "The truth usually is." The conference room felt different when I walked in as an outsider. I'd sat through hundreds of board meetings at the long mahogany table, but always as the CFO presenting reports. Now I was something else. Accuser, whistleblower, problem. Vanessa sat at the far end with her attorney. She looked terrible. Red eyes, no makeup, hair pulled back severely. She wouldn't look at me. The board members nodded as I entered. Some friendly, some neutral, some clearly unhappy I was there. Harrison called the meeting to order. "We're here to address serious allegations raised by our former chief financial officer, Eleanor Hughes, regarding financial irregularities during Vanessa Whitmore's tenure as CEO." "Eleanor, you have the floor." I'd prepared a presentation, 43 slides, every transaction highlighted, every account detailed, every transfer traced from origin to destination. I walked them through 15 years of systematic diversion. It started small in 2006. A management fee charged to clients but deposited to a personal account. $5,000, then another, then larger amounts. By 2012, it was more sophisticated. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Shell companies with Vanessa as the hidden beneficiary. Investment returns that should have gone to clients instead being rerouted. The amounts grew as her confidence grew, 50,000 here, 100,000 there. The board sat in silence as I presented, transaction after transaction, account after account. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. When I finished, Harrison turned to Vanessa. Do you dispute any of the transactions Miss Hughes has presented? Vanessa's attorney started to speak, but she put her hand on his arm. No, she said quietly. The transactions are real. A collective intake of breath around the table. But they're not what a leaner is claiming, Vanessa continued, her voice stronger now. These were performance bonuses, deferred compensation arrangements. Perfectly legal structures approved by counsel. I was ready for that argument. The board minutes from every compensation committee meeting for the past 15 years, I said, placing a binder on the table. None of these arrangements appear anywhere. No approvals, no discussions, no votes. Vanessa's attorney jumped in. Compensation arrangements at the executive level don't always require full board approval. The CEO has discretionary authority, not for personal enrichment exceeding $250,000 annually, the corporate counsel interrupted. She was a sharp woman named Kathleen Park who'd been with the firm for 8 years. That threshold requires board compensation committee approval per the bylaws, which I'm looking at right now, and I see no such approvals for any of these arrangements. Vanessa tried again. My father approved these structures. Before he retired, informal agreements. Richard Whitmore kept detailed records of everything, Harrison said. His voice had gone cold. I helped him organize his files when he stepped down. There's no mention of any special compensation arrangements for you beyond your standard CEO package. The room fell quiet. How much total? One of the other board members asked. A woman named Judith Sterling who'd made her fortune in real estate. $3.9 million, I said. Give or take 50,000 depending on current exchange rates on the offshore accounts. Someone whistled low. That's, Judith trailed off, shaking her head. Vanessa's attorney tried to regain control. Even if the board finds these arrangements were improperly documented, this is a civil matter. An internal issue to be resolved through repayment and corrective action. Miss Hughes's vigilante freezing of accounts, her threats, her unauthorized. Was I unauthorized? I asked, looking at Kathleen Park. She'd been reviewing documents on her laptop while we talked. Now she looked up. No, she said. The security protocols Alina implemented in 2019 specifically allow for automatic asset protection measures when certain conditions are met. Sudden termination of the CFO without board approval is one of those conditions. Irregular transaction patterns in company-linked accounts is another. Both conditions were present. Her actions were covered under existing policy. Vanessa's attorney's jaw tightened. Harrison looked at Vanessa. You terminated Alina without consulting the board? I don't need board approval to make staffing decisions. For the CFO, you do, Kathleen said. Any C-suite termination requires board notification at minimum, approval for cause terminations. It's in both our bylaws and Miss Hughes's employment contract. Vanessa had gone pale again. So let me make sure I understand, Harrison said slowly. You improperly diverted nearly $4 million over 15 years. You terminated the person who discovered this without proper authorization. And when she implemented security protocols to protect those assets, you threatened legal action against her? Put that way, it sounded damning, because it was. Vanessa's attorney whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head, whispered back. An argument conducted in hisses while the board watched. Finally, Vanessa stood. I'd like to request a brief recess to consult with my counsel. Denied, Harrison said. We're going to resolve this now. Here are your options as I see them. You resign immediately. You work with Miss Park to return every dollar you improperly took. The board votes on whether to pursue criminal charges or accept your resignation and repayment as sufficient resolution. Or you fight this, and I personally guarantee you that I will make sure every regulatory agency and law enforcement body with jurisdiction knows exactly what happened here. Your choice. The authority in his voice surprised me. Harrison had always been gentle, soft-spoken, but this was different. This was a man protecting something he cared about. Vanessa looked around the table, looking for allies, for sympathy, for anything. She found none. I resign, she said. Effective immediately? Harrison nodded. The board will vote on next steps regarding repayment and potential legal action. You and your counsel can wait outside." After they left, the room erupted in conversation. Shock, anger, disbelief that Richard Whitmore's daughter had betrayed the firm her father built. Judith Sterling spoke up. "We owe Eleanor an apology, and more than an apology." Harrison agreed. "Eleanor, on behalf of the board, I apologize for what happened. You've protected this firm repeatedly and you were treated shamefully." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I'd like to propose several motions," Harrison continued. "First, that we offer Eleanor reinstatement as CFO with a formal apology and full back pay for any period of terminated employment. Second, that we engage forensic accountants to do a complete audit of all firm accounts. Third, that we pursue full repayment from Vanessa Whitmore with the option of criminal referral if she doesn't comply completely and immediately." The votes were unanimous. Just like that, I had my job back, my reputation restored, my actions validated. So why did I feel so empty? The meeting adjourned 2 hours later after working through immediate next steps: interim leadership structure, communication plans, legal strategy. I walked out to my car in the parking garage feeling numb. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You destroyed me, I hope you're proud." Vanessa. I stared at the message for a long time. Was I proud? She'd stolen millions, fired me without cause, treated me with contempt after I'd saved her company 3 times, but I'd also just demolished her career, her reputation, possibly her freedom if the board decided to press charges. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "I protected the firm, that was always my job. What happens to you now is a consequence of your choices, not my actions." I sent it. Then blocked the number. The next few weeks were strange. I was back in my office, but everything felt different. The board had appointed Harrison as interim CEO while they searched for a permanent replacement. Vanessa had signed agreements to repay everything over 5 years, secured by liens against her properties and investments. No criminal charges were filed. The board decided that full repayment and her resignation were sufficient. Part of me disagreed, part of me was relieved. The firm made a quiet announcement about leadership transition. Vanessa cited pursuing other opportunities. I was mentioned as continuing in my role as CFO. No details about what really happened. That was fine with me. I didn't need public vindication. I needed to know that the firm was safe. 3 months later, Harrison called me into his office. "I want to talk about succession planning," he said. "Are you stepping down already? The board just appointed you." "Not my succession, yours." That caught me off guard. "I'm 61, Eleanor. I have at least 10 more good years if my knees hold out." "And I'm 74, Harrison said with a smile. "The board needs to think younger. You've proven you'll protect this firm no matter what it costs you personally. That's rare. That's valuable. We want to make sure that when you do eventually retire, we have someone with your values ready to step in." We spent the next hour talking about mentorship, about identifying younger employees with potential, about building the next generation of leadership. It felt good, like building something instead of just preventing destruction. That evening, I drove past the old neighborhood where I grew up. The house my parents owned was still there. Different family now, different paint color, but the same small yard where my father taught me to ride a bike. The same porch where my mother would sit and watch the street. They'd both passed years ago. But I thought about what they'd think of everything that happened. The confrontation with Vanessa, the frozen accounts, the board meeting. My father would have worried I'd been too harsh. My mother would have said I should have done it sooner. They'd both be proud that I stood up for what was right, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I pulled out my phone and looked at the wave emoji I'd sent that day. Such a small thing. A tiny image that set everything in motion. Not revenge, not really, justice maybe, accountability, protection. That's what I told myself anyway. 6 months after Vanessa's resignation, the firm had stabilized. The forensic audit found no other irregularities. Client confidence remained strong. We'd even picked up new accounts from people impressed by how we'd handled internal problems. Harrison and I had lunch once a week to discuss operations. He was good at the CEO role, better than Vanessa had been. He actually listened to people, valued experience. made decisions based on what was right for clients and employees, not just what looked good on quarterly reports. I got a call yesterday, he mentioned during one of our lunches, from Vanessa. I set down my fork. What did she want? To know if we'd consider reducing the repayment terms. She's struggling with the payment schedule, had to sell her condo, downsized significantly. That's not our problem. I know. I told her the terms were non-negotiable. He paused. She asked about you, whether you were happy you'd ruined her life. And what did you say? I said you didn't ruin her life, she did that herself. You just made sure she couldn't take the firm down with her. I nodded, that was fair. Did you ever regret it? Harrison asked. How you handled things? I thought about that, really thought about it. I regret that it was necessary, I finally said. I regret that someone I worked with for 15 years turned out to be stealing from the company her father built. I regret that the only way to stop it was through confrontation instead of conversation. But do I regret protecting the firm? No, never. Good, Harrison said, because the board wants to do something. A formal recognition of your service. We're thinking a special partnership designation. Profit sharing. Your name on the building? Absolutely not. Aliner, I don't want my name on the building, Harrison. This is Whitmore and Associates. Richard built it. It should stay his legacy. Richard would want you recognized. Then donate to a scholarship fund in his name. Help kids from neighborhoods like where I grew up get accounting degrees. That's recognition that matters. He smiled. You're impossible to reward properly. Pay me fairly, treat people decently, run the firm with integrity. That's all the reward I need. We finished lunch talking about normal things, market conditions, retirement planning strategies for clients. The new associate who showed real promise in the analyst program. Normal, that's what I wanted. What I'd fought for, really. The ability for Whitmore and Associates to continue being a normal, ethical, well-run firm that helped people manage their money and plan for their futures. Everything else was just noise. 2 years have passed since that Zoom call, since the wave emoji, since everything changed. Vanessa finished her repayment last month. 5 years of payments compressed into 2 because she sold assets and settled inheritance money from a relative. She wanted to be done with it, done with us. I heard she's working for a small firm in Denver now, mid-level position, nothing like what she had before, but employed. Moving forward, good for her, I suppose. Harrison retired last year. The board brought in a new CEO from outside the firm. A woman named Andrea Thornton who spent 20 years at Vanguard. She's good, careful, values the same things Richard Whitmore valued. She and I work well together. I'm still CFO, still protecting the firm, still making sure the numbers tell true stories. I've started mentoring 3 younger employees, teaching them not just accounting and finance, but what it means to be the person who stands between a company and its worst impulses. The person who says no when everyone else wants to say yes. The person who protects people who don't even know they need protecting. It's important work. Quiet work. The kind that doesn't make headlines unless something goes dramatically wrong, which is exactly how it should be. Sometimes I think about that moment. My finger hovering over the send button, the wave emoji, the choice to act instead of accept. I don't know if I'd do it the same way again. Maybe I would have tried harder to work through channels first. Maybe I would have given Vanessa a chance to make it right before forcing the issue. Or maybe everything happened exactly as it needed to. The firm is healthy. Our clients are protected. The people who work here are treated fairly. The legacy Richard Whitmore built continues. That's what matters, not revenge. Not vindication, not even justice, really, just doing the job right. Protecting what needs protecting. Standing firm when it would be easier to look away. My parents taught me that numbers tell stories about real people's lives. For 24 years now, I've made sure those stories have honest endings. Even when honesty is hard. Especially then, the wave emoji is still in my phone. I've never deleted it. Sometimes I look at it and remember what it felt like to send it. The fear, the certainty, the commitment to consequences, it reminds me who I am, what I'm willing to do to protect the things that matter. And that reminder, more than anything else, is why I'm good at this job, why the firm is safe, why the numbers always tell true stories, because someone is watching, someone is keeping track, someone cares enough to act when action is needed. That someone is me, and I'm not going anywhere. That's the story of how a single emoji changed everything. How one moment of decision protected a company, held someone accountable, and proved that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you something. If this story resonated with you, if you believe these kinds of experiences should be shared, I'd appreciate you subscribing to this channel. We're building a community of people who understand that integrity isn't old-fashioned, it's essential. Help us reach 5,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button. Each person who joins helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. Thank you for listening. And remember, the numbers always tell the truth. You just have to be willing to read them honestly.